have lost their fight in the High Court over a staffing contract. A group of 5 doctors had mounted a legal challenge, arguing the contract imposed on them by the Health Secretary Jeremy Hunt was unsafe and unsustainable. It applied to doctors in England. Well, Suzanne Verdi has been in court this morning. What detail did you get from this judge, Suzanne?
Well, it's very interesting. Mr. Justice Green rejected all the claims made by the junior doctors campaign group Justice for Health. They had said that the contract was being imposed unlawfully. They believed it was unsafe and unsustainable. And while he rejected all of those claims, he did say that he thought the junior doctors' concerns were undoubtedly heartfelt. Now, this will come, no doubt, as a huge relief for Jeremy Hunt and his entire department. And in fact, in the last few minutes, they've just released this statement. He says, they say, we welcome this clear decision by the judge that the Secretary of State acted entirely lawfully. They also say we urge the BMA to remove all threat of further industrial action so we can work constructively with junior doctors to address their wider concerns. Now, just where this verdict leaves the junior doctors campaign is unclear. We know the contract is due to start being rolled out from next week, and we also know strikes planned for October, November and December have been called off. Whether there'll be any further calls for any sort of action, we don't yet know.
All right, Suzanne, thank you. Well, Dr. Ben White was one of the doctors involved in today's case, and as you can see, he's with me live. You just heard hot from the court and from the judge as well. Found against you on all grounds, a comprehensive defeat.
It's really interesting to see the government paint this as NHS staff losing. We're actually very satisfied with this judgment. What we've seen through the course of the last year is Mr. Hunt imposing a contract, and what he's had to do right at the last minute is essentially legal acrobatics to satisfy the judge, and he did satisfy the judge on those counts. What it's really important to know is that what he's claimed is we know he can't impose, he isn't imposing, he never was imposing, and remarkably, the British public and the doctors and the staff never thought he was imposing a contract. The
judge said the NHS can, through the regional structures, and they can tell you what you will do. And if you don't want to do that, you walk out, you threaten to do that, and now you've withdrawn that as well. It may not be in his own words, but it's certainly via the NHS. You've lost.
So again, the ruling is quite, the judgment's a lot more complex than that. And in order for Mr. Hunt to satisfy that judge, he had to make last-minute clarifications. And I think it's quite remarkable that we as a country would accept that Jeremy Hunt was never imposing a contract, which is what his defence is in law.
But the judge says, and I have, although, as Suzanne said, it was pretty early, he had total candour when he made his statement to the House of Commons. All the relevant material was read objectively, and the imposition, we are clear that impose means to introduce a contract for junior doctors without the collective agreement of the BMA. That is within law. I mean, I don't see where the clarification is coming for that gives you even a glimmer of hope.
Well, I mean, I've read the full judgment, and the clarification was at the last minute, Mr. Hunt's lawyers claimed that he's not imposing, he was never imposing, he never intended to impose, and nobody in this country thinks he was imposing the contract. They've got out of it on a legal technicality, so we're satisfied that they've had to do that. Without this clarification, we wouldn't be able to talk to you like this and make it clear he's not imposing.
All right, folk at home who are not lawyers, and neither are we, you're a brilliant doctor and I'm a journalist. It means, however, that next month these will be the contracts that pertain to junior doctors in England. Period.
Yeah.
End. Move on.
So I don't agree with that, and I think now there's a freedom that the representative body of doctors, which is the BMA, can negotiate safe terms. What has happened is there's been a political timeline applied to this throughout, which has been very unhelpful, and it's resulted in potentially, many people having operations cancelled, rearranged, and actually if Mr. Hunt had not claimed he was able to impose, which we now know he never did, this wouldn't have happened.
Intriguing. So it clearly has not gone away. Dr. Ben White, thank you very much indeed for coming in and talking to us literally just minutes after the judgment. Most grateful. Now, international prosecutors have said that the Buk missile system that brought down the Malaysian Airlines flight 172 years ago came from Russia and was fired from the rebel-held village of Pervomaysk in the Ukraine. MH17 was travelling from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur when it was hit by a surface-to-air missile, killing all 298 people on board. Victoria Grimes has today's developments.
2 years on, questions remain over how flight MH17 could be blown apart in European skies, scattering the bodies of its 298 passengers onto the poppy fields below. And who was responsible? An inquiry by the Dutch Safety Board last year found that a Russian-made Buk missile hit the plane. And today, an international team conducting the criminal investigation said the missile was fired from territory controlled by Russian-backed rebels.
Door een Buk-teler.
And this Buk-teler was brought in from the territory of the Russian Federation and after launch was subsequently returned to the Russian Federation territory.
Investigators say they've identified 100 persons of interest during the inquiry, but are yet to formally identify individual suspects. Those whose bodies were found in these Ukrainian fields came from 10 countries. 10 of those killed came from the UK, including Barry Sweeney's 28-year-old son Liam. Today he gave his reaction to the findings.
It's no real surprise. It's now again going forward and find out why and how. You know, how can you make a mistake like that?
Barry and the families of the other victims now hope to get answers to their questions over who was responsible, in the hope of justice for their loved ones. Victoria Grimes, ITV News.
Immigration will be the watchword for Jeremy Corbyn this afternoon as he wraps up the Labour Party conference in his keynote speech. The Labour leader is set to say that the country shouldn't be so fixed on the numbers coming in. Our deputy political editor, Chris Shipp, joins us live now from Liverpool. Chris, we already know that many Labour MPs simply don't agree with that. With a man focused on unity, he's going to have to do a little more to try and hold it all together.
Yeah, you're right, Alistair. Look, this has not been an easy week for Labour, let's say that, since his re-election on Saturday, and it all ends with Jeremy Corbyn's speech this afternoon. But remember, he's in a much stronger position than he was before his re-election, so he's going to set out this afternoon what he wants to do with his party, how he wants a Labour government to act. Now, as you say, he will touch on immigration, but his focus will be on funds to alleviate the impact of migration, not on the numbers coming in. And his office told us today that he's broadly happy with the current numbers. Now, there's a school of thought here and elsewhere, Alistair, as you will know, that many Labour supporters voted for Brexit because they wanted to see immigration controlled. Mr Corbyn doesn't think that way, but his shadow Home Secretary Andy Burnham does, and this is what he said on stage a short while ago.
Conference. This party must fully face up to this fact. Millions of lifelong Labour supporters voted to leave the EU, and let's be honest, they voted for change on immigration. We haven't yet even begun to show them that we understand why.
Now, interestingly, Andy Burnham says he's standing down from the shadow cabinet, which gives Mr Corbyn one more headache about how to fill his front lineup. However, Mr Corbyn won't be doing listing this afternoon. He'll be doing the talking, and all the focus will finally be on him.
All right. Chris, thank you. Still to come, victory for a widow forced to go to the High Court for the right to use her own embryos. But first, the former Israeli President Shimon Peres has died aged 93, 2 weeks after having a stroke. His body will lie in state in Jerusalem tomorrow before his funeral on Friday. The Prince of Wales, President Obama and Tony Blair are among those who have confirmed they will attend. Our Middle East correspondent Geraint Vincent now on his life and legacy.
During his time as President of Israel, Shimon Peres was perhaps the world's oldest statesman. Uniquely, he was there at the birth of his nation, and through all of its crises, his energy and his optimism were boundless.
Let us take the risk of trying peace rather than allowing the risk of war.
Peres was born in Poland and came to Palestine when he was 11. Shortly after Israel was founded, he became its defence minister at the start of a political career which would see him become prime minister twice and which would also see one big about turn, from being a strong advocate of Jewish settlement of the West Bank to believing that the settlements were an obstacle to peace with the Palestinians. Good relations with Israel's Arab neighbours became his guiding principle, and the Peres Peace Centre near Tel Aviv is a monument to it.
Shimon Peres was one of Israel's founding fathers, and guaranteeing the survival of Israel was what he devoted his life to. First by being uncompromising and aggressive, and then by extending the hand of peace.
Peres was the man who led secret talks with the Palestinians, which led to a handshake on the White House lawn with Yasser Arafat and a peace agreement based on the idea of a Palestinian state existing alongside Israel.
Our father's legacy has always been the future. Look to tomorrow, he taught us. Build Israel's future with courage and with wisdom, and always continue to strive for peace. We were privileged to have been part of his private family, but today we sense that the entire nation of Israel and the global community mourn this great loss.
He did not live to see his great ambition, the two-state solution, fulfilled. But if it ever is, a share of that achievement will be his.
Shimon Peres, the former Israeli president whose death was announced today. A 20-year-old man has been arrested after two people were killed in Cardiff city centre this morning. Emergency services were called to the city's main shopping area at 6 a.m, where the bodies of a 33-year-old man and a 21-year-old woman were found. A widow has won the right to have her late husband's babies despite facing a legal battle with her IVF clinic. 2 years ago, Samantha and Clive Jeffries were undergoing fertility treatment when Clive died suddenly of a brain hemorrhage. Problems arose because the written consent for the storage of embryos had expired. Well, Sally Lockwood has been in court for us this morning and she joins us live. Sally, it's a complicated case, but for Samantha, a positive outcome.
Absolutely, Alistair. Samantha Jeffries has called this a victory for common sense today. She and her husband Clive were undergoing fertility treatment when he died suddenly 2 years ago. She then had the shock discovery that the forms they'd signed together agreeing to freeze their embryos for 10 years had been changed. And in the last hour, a judge has ruled that the amendment to the storage period was not valid. It had not been initialed or signed as other changes had been on their forms. And he apologised to Samantha for that she'd had to go through this long legal process and share what is a very private matter. Before she came to court today, Samantha had described just the extra suffering this has brought her.
Your best friend's gone, your whole life plan all of a sudden is just not there. A widow loses her husband and then loses her chance to have children. For me, it's about that I should be given the opportunity to be able to choose what to do with my embryos.
Samantha's husband, Clive, was a nurse in the Army Medical Corps and served in the Falklands War. She described him in court today as a unique man and said she was 100% confident he would want her to have his children. And addressing the court, she put it rather simply. She said, "I want to be a mum and I want to have my husband's children." This ruling now gives her that chance.
Sally, thank you. Scotland celebrating its Olympics and Paralympic success with a special multi-event homecoming in Edinburgh today. Gold medal stars, including champion rower Heather Stanning, are among more than 50 athletes joining the all-day party, which has begun with an event involving local school children. Grant Russell is there.
Scotland contributed 13 Olympic and 17 Paralympic medals to the Great Britain Hall in Rio, and today it's the homecoming celebrations in Edinburgh. I'm delighted to say I'm joined by one of our Olympic gold medalists, Heather Stanning. Thank you for joining us. Obviously, you won as part of Team GB, but how great is it to be able to celebrate the Scottish contribution?
Yeah, I think it's really good to of course we're all part of one Team GB, but it's good to recognise the different regions as well, and it's nice to see facilities like this being able to be used, because obviously there's a lot of athletes who have come from this area. Certainly Karen, who was in the rowing team with me, she started her training up here before she moved down to join the rowing team down south. So it's really important that we're able to come back and also share kind of our experiences and show our medals to all the youngsters as well.
You and Helen Glover are absolutely unstoppable. What was it like crossing that line in Rio and winning back-to-back gold?
Yeah, it was amazing. I mean, one of the girls just was asking me now what it felt like as soon as I crossed the line. And I was saying, well, it was a massive sense of relief, to be honest. Having won in London, to commit again for another 4 years, we knew that we had to win gold again. Otherwise, we would have just gone backwards from London, and we knew that gold was the only thing that would be good enough. So it was a huge sense of relief to once we crossed that line and knew we'd done it.
Targeting 2020?
Unsure at the moment. Potentially, there's no reason why not. But yeah, I think we're both kind of taking a bit more time to make that decision this time round.
Yeah, thank you. Well, the celebrations are continuing here in Edinburgh all day today. The public celebration is in Festival Square in the heart of Edinburgh at 3 o'clock.
Graham Russell there. Finally, in the era of selfies and photo bombing, it was a cracker. A couple in New York had an unexpected gatecrasher at their wedding.
By all means.
Newlyweds Ryan and Elizabeth were having their photos taken in Central Park when actor Tom Hanks, who was out jogging, decided to wish them well. Marvellous. That is it this lunchtime. Mark Austin and Mary Nightingale will be here with the ITV Evening News. But for now, from all of us here, bye-bye.